Now we're going to talk about what is a plant. It sounds kind of obvious, but there's different ways to define a plant, and it's more of a gradient when you think about the different diversity of organisms that are out there. So the objectives: recognize plants within an evolutionary context, and recognize the defining traits or characteristics of plants. So all living organisms on Earth are related. You are related to every plant. Every plant is related to every single bacterium. Every living thing on Earth came from a single living common ancestor, which is what we call LUCA, last universal common ancestor. So all living things are related, which means all plants are related. So we can then divide this up into what we call a taxonomic hierarchy. So here is basically the map of all the phylogeny of all domains on Earth. This phylogeny is a way of describing how things are related to one another. The closer they are, the more related they are. I'll go over more phylogeny stuff more later on, but just for the basics for now. So there's three domains: bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. These are the common bacteria. These are bacteria that are what we call extremophiles. And these are eukaryotes, which is us and plants and fungi and animals and protists. And here we're going to focus on green plants. So within eukarya, there's four kingdoms: animals, plants, fungi, and then this catch-all being protists for these ciliates, flagellates, microsporidia, all of those. So what is a plant? Well, we know it's a eukaryote that falls in the kingdom Plantae. Now, when we're talking about taxonomy, we have a hierarchical structure. At the top, we have the most inclusive. This is the domain. It includes the most number of species. And as you go down, you get more specific till you only have one species. In future weeks, we're going to go way more into detail on that, but we're not focusing on it now, but I do need to introduce it for you to understand how we're defining a plant. So, last universal common ancestor here: bacteria, one domain; archaea, one domain; eukarya, another domain. Within eukarya, we have different kingdoms, four kingdoms: protista, animalia, which is where we are, fungi, and plantae. All plants fall within kingdom Plantae. That is how it is defined taxonomically. Plants are within the eukaryotic kingdom Plantae. So all plants are eukaryotes. So that means all plants have the traits of what a eukaryote has. So eukaryotes are complex, way more complex than bacteria. In fact, bacteria are really small compared to a eukaryote. If you imagine, you probably heard about a mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. That's the size of bacteria, and we have lots of them in a single eukaryotic cell. So eukaryotes are much bigger. They're more complex too. So some basic eukaryote traits: they have a nucleus. They have a membrane in which their DNA is sitting. Bacteria don't have that. They have just their DNA is basically free floating inside their cells. So eukaryotes have a nucleus. Plants have a nucleus. They have linear DNA, meaning the DNA doesn't form a circle. If you were to stretch it out, it forms a line. So the ends aren't connected. So plants and eukaryotes have linear DNA. Now, with inside cells, like we have mitochondria, we have the nucleus, we have a whole bunch of other different things, ribosomes and Golgi apparatus and stuff, which we'll talk about later. Most of those ones, not all of them, have membranes. So membranes surrounding it. Eukaryotes have membrane-bound organelles. Prokaryotes do not have membrane-bound organelles. Meaning plants, since they're eukaryotes, have membrane-bound organelles. And like we said, they're also very large. So some traits that define plants from other eukaryotes. So this is what defines it as a eukaryote. But within eukaryotes, we have plants, animals, fungi, and protists. How are plants different from those other three kingdoms? Well, they're multicellular. Protists aren't typically multicellular, but animals and fungi are. So plants are multicellular. They have cell walls, often made of cellulose. So if you look in this image here, you can see how it kind of looks like there's bricks. It looks like there's bricks because they have cell walls, rigid structures surrounding each individual cell. So they have a cell wall. They often, not all plants, but pretty much most, like the vast majority of plants, can undergo photosynthesis. That's why they're green. That green color is given to them by chlorophyll. So it's a pigment that allows them to capture sunlight and carry out photosynthesis. So they're photosynthetic and they have chlorophyll. They're stationary. Plants don't tend to move. At least they're not going to get up and walk away. plants can move to some degree, right? But they're not walking around. Like their leaves might close up, they might curl around objects over some time, but they're not moving like an animal is. They mostly are capable of sexual reproduction, meaning they're going through meiosis, they're taking sperm and egg, and they're going to combine those and to create a new individual. So they're going through sexual reproduction. A lot of plants are capable of asexual reproduction as well, but most plants are capable of sexual reproduction. Now here's where it gets a little bit odd, is that plants are also go through this cycle called alternation of generations. A lot of plants have two different types of plant to them. They have two different generations, a haploid generation and a diploid or whatever polyploidy that plant might be generation. So we call these the sporophyte and the gametophyte. So if you look here, this is a fern. You've probably all seen a fern before. Very common plant. That's the sporophyte of the fern. Now, if you look at the fern on the back of it, if it's the right time of year, you'll see little brown dots on the back. Those are sori, which have what are called spores. When it's the right time, those spores will get released. They'll end up in some sort of water pathway or some wet little area. They're going to grow into the gametophyte. These smaller little plants here, this is a microscope image I took, female gametophyte and male gametophyte. And once these are in a wet environment here, this male gametophyte will release sperm. That sperm will swim over and fertilize the egg of the female gametophyte. So these are separate plants from the sporophyte, so two different generations. That egg will get fertilized and then grow into a sporophyte. And so it goes through this cycle of alternating generations. Okay, we're going to go over all this stuff in more detail, but right now we're just defining what is a plant, so don't get too overwhelmed yet. So to kind of recap, there's an evolutionary definition. They're plants, they're organisms within the domain Eukarya, kingdom Plantae. That's the taxonomic evolutionary description of a plant. There's also the trait-based definition. Multicellular autotrophic organisms, so multicellular organisms capable of making their own energy through photosynthesis, with cell walls that are stationary, capable of sexual reproduction, and they go through multiple different generations through a cycle called alternation of generations. Okay, let me know if you have any questions on that. Other than that, in the next video, we'll go over how plants are important to our lives.